Mayor Kirti Nanan is a youth leader and autism advocate from Trinidad and Tobago, known for founding the Autism Siblings and Friends Network (ASFN) and Rahul's Clubhouse, Trinidad and Tobago's first autism inclusive enrichment centre. Motivated by her younger brother Rahul's autism diagnosis, May has built a movement focused on awareness, inclusion, and empowerment. Through ASFN, she's trained hundreds of youth volunteers and led national advocacy and education initiatives. Rahul's Clubhouse offers life skills training, therapy, and vocational development to children and adults with autism. Recognised with awards like the Diana Award and the 2023 Commonwealth Young Person of the Year, Maya continues to drive youth-led, community-based solutions for disability inclusion across the region and internationally. And she joins me today. Hi, Maya.
Hi, Tanith. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's so wonderful to have you here. Thank you for joining us today. We've got lots to cover because you do so much. So I'm going to get straight into the questions. So, Maya, your brother Rahul's autism diagnosis has been a defining moment in your life. How did that early experience shape your sense of purpose and plant the seeds for your journey as an advocate?
So basically, we are just 1 year apart. So growing up, we would always do things together. And, at one point when I was younger, I realized that I would go to school and he wouldn't. And, sometimes we would go to the park as well, and I would be playing with the other kids. But the parents of the other kids may pull their children away from him because he was different. So I realized that, for me at that point in time, he wasn't different. He was just my brother, considering we were just 1 year apart. He's everything I knew, everything I grew up with. He was just, my brother, and he was nothing different. So basically, I ended up I wanted to make a difference when I realized that the parents would pull their other kids away because I wanted him to be included and to be seen with us and, to be able to participate in those group things like what I did with them. So the turning point was really when I went to school and I realized that he wasn't getting the education at all like that I would. He would be at home whilst I was in school because in Trinidad and Tobago, we don't have much schools here for them or therapy. And even if we do, it's really expensive. And the public schools, which are offered by the government, the training and the teachers, they don't really have much of them employed in those schools. So you can't exactly put the special needs kids into those types of schools. So I realized from a young age that we more or less lacked many things, that so many things were missing, and there were like no opportunities at all for them. So I wanted to make Trinidad and Tobago more inclusive. But obviously I didn't know what the word inclusive would have meant back then. But I just wanted him to be included, which was the main goal and basically what inclusive means at that point. So yeah, that's where the whole idea of Autism Siblings and Friends Network came about. And as the name says, Autism Siblings and Friends Network is more or less to include the siblings of those with autism and get our friends to join the movement as well into creating these opportunities for our autistic siblings.
That's amazing. It makes me so sad to think about you witnessing that and also how your brother must have felt in that moment with the people pulling their children away from him.
Yeah, and the sad thing is he's non-verbal, so he
Oh
he
gosh.
doesn't speak. So you would just see his facial expression from like happy to sad, and it would hurt, but it's even worse when he can't say how he feels or express himself. So sometimes he would cry or scream and those kinds of things because that's his way of expressing himself.
Oh gosh. Well, how amazing that rather than, feel sad about it, you chose to do something about it. That's incredible, Maya. And you founded the Autism Siblings and Friendship Network when you were just 12 years old, which
Yeah.
is a remarkably young age to take on such leadership. So it must have really propelled you seeing, that he wasn't being included in that. You've already mentioned what compelled you to act in terms of seeing, him in that space, but how did you navigate the challenges of being a young change maker in that space?
So thankfully, at that age, I have an aunt. Her name is Dr. Radhika Mahis. She started another organization called Support Autism TNT, And basically what they would do, because they were the adults, remember I was just a minor at that point, and our organization was officially registered at that point. We became the youth group. So I was the one in charge of the youth group from day one. I founded the youth group, and I was the one who got my friends from school involved, who got my cousins involved, who got the neighbors. So we basically started off with just my cousins. And then it grew from that to my friends at school, and then some of the neighbors, and then it just kept growing and growing and growing ever since. So she was really the one who was able to do a lot of things for us legally and push forward for that until I was of the age to be able to register my own organization. And here in Trinidad and Tobago as well, is they don't really encourage you to register your youth organization, which is a bit sad because when you do register, you could have access to so many grants and so on outside of Trinidad and Tobago. Because here in Trinidad and Tobago, there's so many things that you have to go through to get a grant and subsidies from the government that is actually easier for us to get grants outside of here. Which is so sad because I mean you're doing a work for this country here, you're doing a work for the people here, and there's so many red flags. So because of her, and when she registered her organization, we were able to move forward. And then I got the Diana Award in 2020. And then after that, they passed me on to QCT, which is the Queen's Commonwealth Trust. And I was actually the youngest awardee for the grant in honor of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. And it was because of QCT I was able to register my own organization. They told us that, you had to have your own registered organization. It couldn't just be one that was under someone else. You have to have it in your name. So that was really the push that we needed at that point in time as well, to register on our own and to be our own independent network.
How incredible and crazy that they don't encourage you to do more things like that. Thankfully, you had your amazing auntie that was able to support you. And also, it sounds like your family are incredibly supportive in terms of the cousins and everybody getting involved with it as well, which, is often the best way to grow because you start with a really solid foundation then in terms of a beautiful network. And then as more and more people find out about it, then it's got the opportunity to grow.
Yeah.
But I'm not surprised to hear that you were the youngest at the Queen's Commonwealth receive an award because you're so fantastic and you're so driven as well. You've already mentioned this a little bit that autism often comes with misunderstanding, which would have been the children being pulled away from him, but also the stigma. In your experience, how have you seen it mark individuals, families, and even entire communities? And how does your work aim to rewrite that narrative?
So in Trinidad, I would say that a lot of the older generations, they have a very narrow-minded mentality where they are still stuck in that world where everything is supposed to be normal, or things are supposed to be like a certain way and it's supposed to have a societal norm. So it's a bit difficult to break it with that generation because a lot of the autistic parents as well, they don't come from a middle class or a rich background per se. They come from a lower class background. A lot of the times it would just be like the parent and the child traveling, for example. And in Trinidad and Tobago, our taxis are not like how it is in the UK, where it's just like that particular person in the cab. It's usually a full trip, so it's the entire car filled or the entire maxi that would be filled. And a lot of the times, if the parent is traveling with a child, the people around in the car would usually be like, if the child is having a meltdown because of everything being too overstimulating, the people in the car would be like, you need to beat the child. Or they would make really harsh, old time remarks that you wouldn't really expect them to be making in a society today. So it's really terrible that, maybe if you were hitting your child some more, disciplining your child some more, it's really hard for parents to be able to be traveling with their child, one, because it's already a big thing, but two, hearing those kinds of remarks from the public. So my work more or less aims to rewrite that narrative when it is we go out into companies and into public spaces and we do training sessions for the workers, to let them know more about autism and how to identify autism.
Mm.
As well as I believe that really with the younger generation, they are more easily, they open to change and they are open to differences. And I think they are the ones who would be changing that narrative for autism and special needs and so on, as opposed to the older one. So that's where, we involve the younger children. So when it is they become like doctors, and so on, they would now recognize the persons with autism in the hospitals and so on, and be able to say, okay, I know I've interacted with someone like this, so I've had training in this. I know how to deal with them or how to interact with them, so they won't make those kinds of remarks and so on. But it's really horrible in terms of people are really vocal here in Trinidad, so they would be so up in your business where they are not supposed to be. It's terrible. But a lot of times as well, people stare. They just stare. They give this harsh stare, and it's like, why are you staring? I'm not staring at you. It's so rude to say at someone like that simple manners. So again, we're trying to change narrative. Don't stare, don't point, and it's something that I would say they are working on. Like, it's becoming less and less, but at the same time, it's still there and it's not entirely gone.
Hmm.
And I would like for it to be entirely gone one day.
Yeah, well, do you know what, Maya? The work that you're doing is going to, drive that really, really.
Yeah,
I guess, what you're saying is really key here is that the lack
yeah,
of education, people don't know what they don't know. And so the more that you can continue the amazing work that you're doing to
yeah.
educate people
And
and help them to
sometimes
understand.
they are just stuck in their own world. So you could educate them as much as they want, and they would still be like, oh no, the child's still not smart or whatever. It's just, sometimes it all comes down to that individual. Because I mean, in our world like today's society where you have access to so many things online, and we're always like in the newspaper or on TV speaking out about it. And we're just one phone call away, and we always encourage people to get involved and to volunteer with us. So at the end of the day, it really does depend on that individual person to, make that difference and just to be a kind human being at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I mean that there's always going to be people out there that are ignorant, that have
Yeah.
no understanding, that don't care, and actually they're just rude and
Yeah. A
difficult
lot of
to
the times as well, we've realized that, unless the issue actually affects that person, they don't really care. And it goes not just with the regular citizens, but with the politicians here as well. Because with the last government, many times we reached out asking for meetings and so on, to be able to try to work with them, but nothing, no response. So it's really bad.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, again, the work that you're doing is fantastic, and the more you can spread the word and you can train
Yeah.
more people up, the more that you can help to change that narrative. And even if it's not for everybody, the work's still there and the work
Yeah.
still needs doing. So, from Rahul's Clubhouse to your volunteer training initiatives, you've created tangible spaces for belonging and inclusion. And I think that's equally important because if they've got spaces that they can go to and they feel really safe and included, then even if there are times, and of course there will be, they've got those space. What does true inclusion look like to you, and what barriers still need to be dismantled to achieve it?
So I would say as an organization, we're doing as much as we can. But really and truly, I think now it really needs to come from, a national level with the government being involved, because that's the only way now we could actually have like legislation and policies and so on in place at that level. So I would definitely say, we're doing the best as we can. We're always introducing new things for the kids, we're always giving it all our best. And after each event and so on, we always try to improve how we could do it better or a different way next year so they could get that experience. But I would say a true inclusion would really be the day when, the kids and adults with autism have a space to go to in a normal public school where there are teachers trained to deal with them, where there's like a sensory room and so on set up in the school for them, as well as the wait time for diagnosis in Trinidad is really bad. So it stems from 12 months to 24 months. And some of the parents are even saying that they don't have one until 2027, which is like 3 years. So
Wow.
that's a really long time for a wait list to be diagnosed with autism, because in that 2 or 3 years, there's so much that could be done with the child, in terms of the parent working with the child and so on.
Mm.
So I would say true inclusion would be the day that the times for those are lessened and they could get an appointment right away. And that um the once they get that appointment, that the work could start from that day. Like, we don't have to wait for the future. The future is now, and it needs to start now in terms of that. Because if the longer you hold off on things like that, is the longer it would take for the child development. We encourage parents to continue working with the child, but at the same time, they need to know, like, what a lot of the parents as well, is their first time having kids, is their first time hearing about autism. And it's only when they meet the doctor they learn about the certain therapies that their child would need and so on. And at the same time, we can't exactly diagnose a child. It's a pediatric developmental doctor. So only they can do that. And, when they do that, they would give them the list. But we could provide them with the information. But at the same time, they need to know what exactly from that list they need to seek help with. So, yeah, it would definitely be the day all those things could come together and work hand in hand with each other.
Yeah, and actually, my own son, when he was younger, my daughter was very neurotypical. My son, when it came to putting shoes on and things, really struggled, and I found it frustrating as a parent because I thought he was being naughty. And actually, I read a list online that somebody had written about sensory processing disorder, which is on the
Yeah.
autism spectrum as well, and it made me cry, Maya, because I realised that I've been trying to put him into a
Yeah.
box of this is how children should be behaving. And so the resources, I know it must be so frustrating about the doctor's appointments and things, but having the resources and some of those checklists and things available to parents means that they can not necessarily get a self-diagnosis, because as you said, it's important to talk to the professionals, but at least have some idea about what they're dealing with and how to change things up. Because I know for me as a parent, it broke my heart to realize
Yeah.
that, and it completely changed the way that I parented my son, because I realized that A, we're all individuals and we're all different in our own ways, but B, not one size fits all when it comes to education, parenting, children,
Yeah.
and all of that. So that's why what you're doing, resonates so deeply. I think it's such a beautiful mission. But as with me in that moment in time that I remember, that still makes me feel emotional when I think about it right now,
Oh.
carrying a mission so deeply tied to your personal life can be both powerful in the work that you're doing and heavy at the same time. So, how do you stay grounded and inspired whilst balancing the advocacy, leadership, and the emotional toll that comes along with it?
That is a difficult question, because I get that all the time. Even my friends, they're like, "How do you do it all?" And I genuinely have no idea. I think because I've been doing it at such a young age, it's just become like a routine for me to be involved in so many things. And it's not just those things as well. It's like extracurriculars, like the hobbies and so on too. So it's just all about balancing it and making sure that you stay sane while doing it, and to not always make decisions based on your emotions right away. You just have to think it through with a clear mind, like, and once your heart is there and you're passionate about something, no matter how big, just go for it. That's what I always do. Sometimes, I don't even inform the other directors. I just go ahead and I make that decision, which is really wrong, but they know me. And they know that once it is I set my mind towards something, that I would go for it. But I would also say that, the support comes from my brother. Because, at the end of the day, I'm doing it for him.
Mm.
And yeah, at the end of the day, it's really all for him. Everything I do is for him. So that's where it really comes from.
Oh man, that's so beautiful. And you're right, what you're doing, the work that you're doing is because you're passionate about it because of your brother,
Yeah.
right? But there's a difference between being passionate and emotional. And so I think that's really solid advice to anybody else in terms of, you've got to think with your head and your heart at the same time, but also be in a space where you're being empathetic but not sympathetic, so that you can make
Yeah.
sure that you are clear in your direction, even if it means going making your decision decisions without checking with the other directors first on occasion. But I guess that just comes from, the urgency for change to happen really quickly as well. So your story is amazing, and your brother must be absolutely incredible, and I'm sure he is so proud of you and your parents and rest of your family as well. Your story is proof that being marked by a personal experience can spark widespread change. What message would you most likely to leave with young people who feel different, misunderstood, or defined by a single part of who they are?
I would definitely say that, you're all unique. We're all unique if you really think about it. I usually tell, but my friends and I, we usually say that we're weird or we're cool, and we try to make that something that is cool, is not different to be weird or to be unique. And I would say that, just continue being who you are. There is a space for every single one of us in this world, and we all have so many gifts and so many talents that we are yet to discover, or that we have discovered thus far, that contribute towards a better society. And at the end of the day, I would say that once you are a great and a kind human being, that is all that matters. Nothing else and nobody else should matter, because at the end of the day, once you're a kind human being, you would show that to other people, and you would be understanding of their differences, and you would try to make a difference, whether it's, you hold the door for someone, or you buy their lunch in line. So I think at the end of the day, it really comes down to that, to just being a simple, kind human being.
I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. And you're right, there isn't a single human being on this planet that's the same as somebody else. And what we do is we collect people that are like us, or, similar to us. But I think the more we can celebrate the diversity of
Yeah.
human beings, the more that we can see what values and gifts that each and every one of us have to bring to the table, because I think that's really important. That's so beautiful, Maya. Thank you so much for taking the time out to share that with us today. We're going to share any links and things that you have within the article, so that people can click through, they can read more about it, they can find out more about your journey. So please share those links with me and I can include them. But yeah, just wanted to say how absolutely wonderful it's been to have you chatting with me today, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me and for giving me this opportunity. I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure.